oogie or not oogie?
No,
that is the question.
definitely
Whether
not.
'tis
No.
nobler in the mind
Today
to
we're going to
suffer.
be making
The
quite a
slang-
bit.
But seem it we all concur not is the better
Today
of the
we're going to
two.
be making quite a bit
Let
of
us
progress
try
on my
the
mega
Macbeth. We
base,
can
starting
still
with a
hear you.
project I've
Come.
definitely not
Well,
been
prithee
avoiding.
keepeth
That, of
quiet
course,
while my own
talk
performance is
okay,
being performed.
fine. Anyway, what were you saying?
Come,
Oh, I'm pretty sure
come,
his
give
beard
me
is
your
We've
hand.
also made it to
What's done
1,000
cannot be
subscribers,
undone.
so as promised,
Guards,
I'll
take
be...
this blinking idiot hence from here.
Here come
I
the
could use a
oops.
Shakespeare right about now. Foul whisperings are
Sorry,
abroad.
no,
Unnatural
it's part of
deeds
it, we're
do
fine.
breed unnatural troubles. Alright, this spot, which I chose myself, zoom in a little, thank you, is much better. Last episode, we took a little break from our base and created a decked out minigame. But today we're back, and it's finally time we face the sixth face of this place, as it kinda defaces the whole base. Most of the materials I need, like moss and mangrove leaves, I already have lots of, but for some reason I decided to build out of azalea leaves again, so I guess let's head to an open field and do some more farming. Alright, with the trees relieved of their leaves, I think we're good to leave. And that just leaves us with a bunch of mining, mossing, and meticulous vine making, which isn't moderately amusing, so let's play some music and do a quick time lapse. Well, I definitely remember why I avoided doing that for so long, cause yeah, that took a really long... Actually, I don't want to talk about it. But now we finally have the entire ceiling mined, and lined with these divine-looking vines. I'm ready to resign. And I even incorporated some of the caves we had going through the ceiling, as not only did it look cool, but they're also pretty much the only way to get in here right now. Because of the biome change, some of the mangrove leaves ended up looking a bit more dead than others, but dead or not, it definitely looks a lot better than a flat stone ceiling. But this isn't the end of face number 6, as I still have a few tricks. For starters, I feel like it's a bit too green, so let's add in some flowers. This first flower is gonna look a bit like a giant spore blossom. For this time I'm using some oxidized coppers, that's a little less green than everything else around it. And then we can put the petals to the metal using some cherry wood. We'll talk more about the lighting in a minute, I know how exciting, but to make the flowers stand out even more, I'm using some frog lights to make these middle flower part thingies. The part of the stamen where pollen is produced is called an anther. I knew that. And there's our giant spore blossom done, which luckily doesn't rain giant spores. The next flower is a little smaller, and to me kinda looks like a bell. Oh, so there will be other colors as well. I'm not sure why I'm just doing the pink ones. There, I made a red one, which I guess isn't that much different. And on these ones we have the frog-light anther hanging down a bit, which I think looks pretty cool, although this one might be a little big. Alright, with the anther chamfered, we can move on to the next one. And this one's just gonna be built out of a bunch of bamboo and birch blocks. I know some of you find the birch wood type to be offensive, but this offense is. And on the end of each of these stick thingies, we can place a plant that looks even more like a bell than the other flowers, and then some end rods on the end for light. This is definitely one of the more simple plants, as it kinda just looks like some hanging grass or sticks or whatever, but I think it looks pretty good, so it'll definitely stick around. The final plant is by far the most interesting of them all, as I tried to make a sort of vine-like plant that twists around itself. But yeah, I think this design actually works, or at least it does in my twisted mind. Also, when I said final plant, I meant final plant before you die of boredom. There's also a few more like this one, which looks a little more like grapes than it was supposed to. Almost all the rest of them are duplicates, so let's just add all those in real quick. There we go. And already the ceiling is looking much better. But now it's time to change out the lighting, which definitely won't be light work. So far I've just been using the torch spam and replace it later strategy, but that hasn't exactly been going too well on the walls, so I should probably just do it now. The ceiling, still not the wall. So in every spot that doesn't have a flower lighting it up, I'm just gonna add in one of these small soul lantern plants, which of course means I'm gonna need a lot of soul lanterns. I already have a bunch of normal lanterns, so I should be able to just add some soul sand, duplicate them a bit. Perfect, then all that's left to do is place them. And just like that, the ceiling is finally done. Yeah, that took a while, but I would happily subscribe to doing that amount of work again, as it makes this place look so much better. And speaking of subscribe, the ceiling may be done now, but how can we have giant flowers without giant butterflies? Well, I mean, I guess like this, but I want them, okay? I think I want to put the first butterfly right above this tower, so let's just flutter up there real quick. To make its body, I'm using some black concrete and black terracotta, both of which are definitely black. We can then use some dark oak fence gates to give it some legs, and some fences which make 10 out of 10 antennas. And butterflies without any eyes are just butterflies, so let's add those in. Oh, why am I allowed to have a microphone? Now it's time for the wings, so I'll start by building the shape out of black stone. That looks about right. Then we can fill them in using mostly orange wool, but I think I also want to use some more black concrete to create a sort of pattern. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I know I'm winging it, but I'm not really sure why I'm acting like I'm winging it. I've already built this in creative. To light this up a bit, I tried using some yellow candles on the butterfly's head, but it ended up just looking like a crown, which I obviously don't want, as it would put most of my base under a monarch. So instead I'm using some brown candles on the end of the antennas, which I think look pretty good. There's the first one done, but this guy's a bit of a social butterfly, so I should probably build him some friends. When I first dug this place out, I kept all the mob spawners, and with the butterflies I can finally make use of them. Well, decorative use at least. Because instead of just having them up around the flowers, I thought it'd be cool if we used them all throughout the base to finally bring this place to life. This one, for example, I'm gonna have carrying around a bunch of materials, including a mob spawner. First things first, we needed another butterfly, so I built this one using light blue wool, which almost makes you think it's not an exact copy of the first one. Underneath the butterfly, we can then build a small platform to carry all the stuffs and things. This will mostly be built out of spruce wood, but I haven't used any hanging signs yet, so let's throw some of those on there as well. We can then add some barrels and a bunch of people's workstations, or perhaps one person with a butterfly career. But unlike me, we're gonna have the butterfly carrying this platform, so we need a good way to attach it. And for that I want to use some leads, which of course means I need a mob to attach them to. Chickens are by far gonna be the easiest, so let's just put this guy into a hopper, then feed him some special seeds that'll help him relax. Then this shouldn't take too long. And then as far as the leads go, we should have more than enough, despite never crafting a single one. Oh, haven't seen that in a while. Alright. Yeah, that should be enough. So now we just need to spawn a chicken with the eggs. There we go, attach a lead to it, and connect it to the platform. That went surprisingly well. Working with mobs always makes me nervous. Or I guess you could say I'm getting butterflies in my stomach from putting things in the butterfly's stomach. Alright, there's all 4 of them in place, and yeah, that worked pretty well, I think. But I also think the butterfly matches the building a little too much, so let's just take you down a hue. Much better. And there's our first worker butterfly built. On top of being used to transport items and blocks, the butterflies can also transport all the inhabitants of this place, providing a way to get between all the different layers. The only other way to do it would be to change the form or build a bunch of ladders, which doesn't sound too bad, the former, not the latter, but I think the butterflies are definitely the best way to handle the layered layout. I have plans to make plans for all kinds of butterfly stables and pickup points in the next episode, but for now I think 2 butterflies is enough. Actually, I did get rid of the blue butterfly, so it's only fair that I build a replacement. And this one we're gonna have hanging from one of the flowers. Although I don't think I have enough blackstone for this, so I guess let's just build a cocoon. That'll do, and now we just have to wait. Yeah, this is gonna take a while, let's speed it up. Alright, with the third butterfly in place, it's time to start working on the other project I have planned for today, and that's gonna go behind this wall here. And before you get mad that I'm doing another side project instead of doing more work out here, this one's your fault, as it's gonna be my 1,000 subscriber build. I'm eventually gonna be building stuff in the walls on either side of this spot, so in order to get into this room, you first have to walk down a hallway. So let's just hollow out all the stone to hollow out all the hallway. There we go. And in this hallway, we're gonna be getting into something that I've been avoiding for over a year now, and that's lore. Please note that the amount of time leading up to the lore has no effect on how good it may or definitely won't be, but I don't want to just write the story inside a book and quill, as I don't think a single person has ever wanted to read one of these. And so instead I'll be telling the story through wooden carvings. The first carving is going to be a miniature version of my starter base, which if you haven't seen before, I built it in episodes 2 through 6, so I highly recommend you don't watch those, they're terrible, so I'll just show it now. Basically all you need to know is that there's houses, docks, a big boat, and more houses. But over here we also have the mine, which is minorly important to the story, and also is probably still a favorite build of mine. So heading back, I built a miniature version using a bunch of slabs and stairs, including the crane above the mines. And here in the mine, something special was found. To make the character in the story, I'm just going to use some plain armor stands, which are a little bit skinny as sticks and stones may make its bones, but it works, so that's good for me. The next part of the story is the start of the adventure, so for this I'm building a miniature version of the boat for my starter base. And it may not look like much, but building a boat at this scale makes it pretty hard to sell the sails. And we can then include another color behind the boat to make a woke wake, and it might have also been better to use a different wood type for the boat as well, but I think that ship has sailed. The third part takes us underwater, so instead of using spruce planks like I did for the rest, I'm going to use some darker woods. But it still doesn't look very underwatery, so next I'll add in some kelp, which should help with that. And in here underwater is where you meet the Guardians. They were a bit challenging to get to look right, but if we use some fence gates for the tail, and a sign for the eye, I think it looks pretty good. But the Guardians aren't the only creature introduced here, and just like the leaf-covered floating wood type it's made of, this one brings trouble. Before we move on to the second side of the hull, to make this look a little better, I'm just going to add some stratus clouds to the above water part, and some bubbles underwater. Now back above the water, I'm once again using the same boat design, because it's the same boat, but now we have some wanted and unwanted guests. I'm sure you've noticed by now, but in every one of these scenes there's a conduit, which I only had 3 of, so I'm gonna need a few more. And I should have enough Heart of the Seas from that time when I got them off camera a few minutes ago, so now we just need the shells. To get a few more of those, I took a quick trip to see Shelly, as she sells seashells by the seashore. But even with the shells she sells, I'm still 6 shells short, and surely if Shelly sees a seashell on the seashore, said seashell shall not be withheld, and to me she shall sell them, or Shelly shall sell seashells no more. There they are. And that just leaves us needing one more Nautilus shell, so I think I'll just go ahead and build this one. Then if we just stand back a little ways, we should be able to grab it. And now it's time for my favorite of the scenes, as this is where the creature emerges from the water. I want it to look like some kind of giant squid, so using some more of this miserable, meager mangrove wood, I'll give it its signature pointy head. Then in the middle I'll use some dark oak wood to rebuild the giant eye that we saw over there. There's the body done, so now we just need to add the tentacles. And before all the ocean nerds rise up, I know they technically only have 2 tentacles, but I don't really care, so I'll call them what I want. But I don't want to have the squid be empty tentacled, so right in front of its eye, it's gonna be ripping the boat in half. There we go, then in this one we'll have it holding the conduit. And now we just have one scene left. So here I mirrored the village from this side, just a little more destroyed and burnt. Don't ask where the fire came from, because I have no idea. In front we can then add in a few more guardians doing their lasery guardian things, and then we're done. But even though the whole thing's built, as far as the story goes, I've been just about as vague as humanly possible, so I guess it's time to read this. The story debuts in a town called Tubebackr, where a miner of a minor mine was finding all kinds of stones and ores, one of which shone more than any before. He leaned into the one that glistened and leniently listened. From the ore he heard a ring, and knew then this was more than just a thing. He followed the noise, being sure to keep poised, and with a longing to prevail, he set sail to a place from which he certainly did not hail. Hail began to pour as waves grew taller than he'd seen before, but the once small sound was now thundering, so no pound of a wave nor flashing of a clouds where thunder was bound could stop him from wondering. In an instant a wave pulled him under, but at that moment his hopes did not burst asunder. The rock began to glow as creatures began to show, the likes of which he had never known. To them this seemed to be much more than a stone, but in this thought they were not alone. Halfway done, he returned to his boat, not expecting to find it afloat, like the storm was never there. With the stone in his hand, they followed his every command, a power he never wished to share, but the creature surely did not care, and would persist no matter the affair. Rising from the sea, the red fish not blue fish, then split the boat into not one but 2-ish, and with the stone as its own, no place was safe, no matter if that place was called home. And as the creature from the blue overthrew the town of Tubebackr, the Guardians knew what they needed to do. With their beams, the Guardians who speak for the seas aim not for the thorax, but for the stone, not concerned with the power it could have given their own. Alright, that's enough of that. To complete this room, there's not much more, but to make it more neat, I'll do the ceiling and the floor. Great, now I can't stop. I don't want to do anything that'll distract too much from the walls, but we can at least make it look finished. There's the hallway done, but this is only the entrance to the main build, which will be built in a much bigger room. A much bigger room that doesn't exist at the moment, so I guess let's do some digging. And there's yet another hole added to our collection. At this point, I think I have a problem. Like usual, this ended up being a bigger project than I thought it was gonna be, but at least my already unlimited supply of stone stuff is replenished, and I also got a pretty ridiculous amount of slime. But even with enough stone removed to cover the Sahara, and a few hours of forming with the prefix Terra, this place still doesn't look that good. So to fix that, the first thing I want to do is replace the floor with grass. There we go. And not only does covering the tuff with turf add some color into the room, but it also gives the floor some continuity with the outside area, which is definitely sought after. I think I've done more than enough ceiling terraforming for one episode, or lifetime. So in here I'm going to be leaving it somewhat flat and just adding in some designs and stuff, but having it like this doesn't exactly leave the ceiling very supported, so being the pillar of the space I should probably build some pillars. I'll build these using mostly stone bricks, because I have to do something with all that stone. Not that this will even put a dent in the millions that I have, but right now they look pretty boring, so on these pillars that prevent a cave-in, we can do some engraving, and I think it will look pretty cool if we make it look like an assortment of stacked spheres. However, we are in Minecraft where spheres aren't really a thing, so instead I build an 82-sided shape, which is called an octacondecagon. We can then build a tetradecahedron on top to separate the octacondecahedrons, giving us one enneaconticahexagon. On top of that, we can build 3 more octacondecahedrons and 2 tetradecahedrons, or rather 1 dihectatetracondicahexagon. To top it off, we'll add a thicker tetradecahedron, giving us 1 big trihectaoctaconticatetragon. Sounds like my sanity is gone. To finish this pillar off, I'll add some deep slate to the top and bottom, and light it up using soul torches behind walls. That looks pretty good, but I feel like there should be some deep slate in the middle section too, so I want to try wrapping a snake statue around it. And if you're wondering how a snake fits into the lore, I think I'll save that one for another time. Well, that and I have no idea, but I did put them on the temple for some reason, so I guess there's that. Alright, with the boa constructed, the first pillar is finished. Based on the overall layout, this room kinda lends itself to having some sort of centerpiece, and for that I want to build a big amethyst tree. But much like anything big made out of blocks, we're gonna need a big number of blocks, namely glass, crimson wood, and cherry wood. And I know we still have to do the other 3 pillars as well, so where am I? Oh, there you are. While I go get that stuff, you can finish those. No, he'll do it. That should be all I need for the tree, so let's just go ahead and place that down as a sapling. Perfect, and then we can just bone meal it. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . And there's our amethyst tree. Instead of just making the trunk straight up, I decided to give it a little bit of a spiral, which I think looks pretty cool, and also kinda matches the snakes too. But I feel like the leaves look okay at best, as they're kinda lacking anything special. While not all of them are bad, so I could understand if liking them like this is the popular opinion, but I'm at the helm of the project, and I think it leaves you wanting more. So after asking myself many times how to fix it, I think I want to add some amethyst clusters. And luckily we have a geode right here. But as you know, these take quite a while to grow, so I think it's time we tick out our clock again. That should be enough. And not only will these add a lot of shape and texture to the leaves, but it'll also light them up, giving the tree a bit of a glow, and making it actually visible is nice too. There's the tree finished, and yeah, that looks way better. And now that we have all the amethyst clusters added, I don't really need this geode anymore, but it kinda feels wrong to destroy a geode that's right next to an amethyst tree. And so instead of the geode receding, I want to turn it into a seedling that'll one day grow into another tree. The best way I can think to do it is make it look like the geode is blooming like a flower. And I know trees don't really grow from flowers, but amethyst trees don't grow period, so I think I can do whatever I want. We are limited by the shape a little bit, but I think that looks pretty good. We can then use some purple glass and glow lichen to create the middle bits, which in case you forgot are called anthers. Then a little cherry wood later, we're left with this, which definitely helps it fit into the area a bit better. But anyway, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. I've already done this joke, it wasn't funny the first time. Along the outside of the room, we have 3 of these cutout sections, and in them I'll be continuing the story from the hallway in the form of relief sculptures. And in case you don't already know, relief is not only the feeling you get when my videos end, but also a type of carving where you carve into something, in this case a stone wall. Although technically I am building in an already dug out area, but shush. After the Guardians saved their village from the sea creature, the village people, no not those ones, paid their thanks by building the Guardians a home of their own. So I started by building a miniature version of the ocean monument, but right now it doesn't really look like it's being built. So right above it I'm adding in a few boats sent from the village, one of which has a crane attached to it, carrying the final piece of the monument. Not gonna lie, it does kinda look like a giant magnet, but it's set in stone, so I can't really change it now. To finish this off, I'll add some polished andesite for the water, some kelp around the monument, a few bubbles, a stone version of myself, and then a couple wait, what are you? Okay, there's that part done, but we still have to do the top and bottom. These parts don't really have anything to do with the story, they're mostly just lines and stuff. And just like that, the first of our reliefs is done. Also, for the sake of the story, we're gonna pretend my, not so vegan guardian farm doesn't exist. Before we do the other 2 sculptures, or explain how this room has anything to do with subscribers, why don't we take a quick break to hear from today's sponsor. Are you tired of the entrance to the hallway you just built looking like the victim and cause of a hate crime? Like it was built by a redstoner who just tried building for the first time, to the point where even a blindfold wouldn't be an excuse. Well, me too, so I should probably fix that now. Almost all the buildings I've built so far, I've used pretty much the same block palette, where it's just spruce logs with terracotta and sandstone. And so to keep these buildings interesting, I think the smart thing to do would be to change the block palette for this one. So I'll start by building the frame using spruce logs, and then fill it in using some white terracotta and sandstone. The roof is still gonna be blue, but I want it to be special, as this building contains the story behind the base, which I guess also makes it a 1-story building in 2 ways. The ocean is a pretty big part of the story, so after wavering for a while I decided to make the roof look like waves. Like I said, I'm still using the same blue color, so that's copper, stripped warped wood, warped planks, and warped fungus, which it looks like I'm out of, so let's just warp down and get some more. The color of the copper obviously doesn't match the rest of the wave, so I was just gonna wait for that to oxidize, but time and tide wait for none, so I guess I'll just use my already done stuff. There's the waves done, but to turn the tides and what you might think, the roof still isn't, because right above the waves I want to add a few boat carvings. I was originally going to build these boats out of solid gold, but it kinda just looked like I was showboating, so instead I'm just using oak wood. Of course making sure to use straight pieces of wood so they don't look warped like the rest of the roof. There's our bows done, which is probably enough to give a good idea of what it's going to look like, but what's really going to make this build either fail or prevail is the somewhat pale looking gale-blown sails. These of course are also going to be made out of oak wood. Then all that's left of the roof is to give it some light using some more soul lanterns. There's the building just about finished, but there's still one more thing I want to add out front. To carry on the ocean theme first seen on the roof, I'm adding a second wave of waves, including a first and second wave, and those do look pretty good, but it does add a lot of sharp edges to the build, so you might need to sign a waiver if you want to visit. But anyway, there's the entrance to our entrance finished, and I think it turned out pretty good. But you can't have an entrance to the entrance without an exit to the entrance, so in here I want to rebuild that exact same thing. And that looks pretty good, but everything man made in this room so far has been completely grayscale, and I don't really want this to be any different, so I think I'm gonna try turning this building into a stone sculpture. If you haven't figured it out already, pretty much everything I build here is gonna be some kind of sculpture or carving. But unlike the reliefs, this one's not carved into the wall, but rather built on top, so instead of being limited to using only stone blocks and stone close enoughs like andesite, I can use some other blocks like basalt and deep slate to give it some more depth. Now that the building has been starved of its colors to make it look carved like the others, the exit to the entrance is finished. But to make it fit in with the other walls a little bit more, I'm just gonna add this guardian eye carving that we have on all the others. And speaking of all the others, I should probably build those. The next part of the story takes us back to the destroyed village, so I'll start by rebuilding that. However, this time it's made out of stone, which definitely doesn't make it even less interesting. In front of the village, I'm once again building the boat, of course a newer, less ripped in half version. And now that I have more room to build, I can make it look a lot more like the actual one. I even tried including the guardian eye we have on the sail. And speaking of guardians, but even though the Guardians now have a monument, the village still isn't exactly predominant, really more of a monument, so it's time the village people alongside the Guardians began searching for a new home. But it wasn't long before searching became following, as small floating lights began appearing before them, guiding the way. No one really knows for sure where they came from, but they're often believed to be the shards of the broken conduit, now infused with the Guardians' magic. Actually, what am I saying? They are what I say they are, and that's what they are. And I decided the best block to represent these in stone form would be shulker boxes, because, well, I don't know why I do this to myself. And of course making sure each of them is attached in some way, as you arguably can't have floating stone. To finish the top of the carving off, I'll add in the sun and some clouds, which actually I guess would mean it's daytime and you could barely see the floating lights, which is kind of the whole point of this card. Alright, with the moon and stars added, the second relief is done. I know some of you might have liked the day sky better, but if it's any constellation, I did add the Big Dipper. And now we just have one part of the story left, and this is where we finally get to a place that looks a little more familiar. That of course being the cave, before all the doors, temple floors, lore, and still so much more. To show the arrival of the people, I'm once again building a boat, but this time I'm using andesite for the sails, which actually isn't any different, I'm just out of things to say. And before you ask exactly how the boat got down here in the first place, well, don't. Even though their new home was found, the lights still seemed to be guiding them, so of course they followed, only to find a small purple sapling, a sapling that would grow alongside their new civilization. And we're finally done with the lore. Actually, that's not a good thing, I forgot what I have to do next. How is it that I end up doing this in every single video? Alright, that'll have to be enough, because I'm not getting any more, at least until the next episode. But what do I need it for, you ask? Or probably didn't, but I'm telling you anyway. As much as I like all the stone stuff in this room, I feel like there's a little too much stone stuff in this room. So past me thought it'd be fun to continue the texturing from the main room in here, which further past me decided to use these blocks for some reason. And on top of the texturing, I still have to do the ceiling and a couple more things to make it more appealing, so let's finish this project off with a time lapse. And we're done-ish. I know it's hard to tell from my stone-faced skin, but I'm really happy with how this place looks. Like I said, the texturing is exactly the same as what we have in the main area, but in here I removed torches from the block palette and added in a bunch of these mushrooms. So basically this is what it's supposed to look like. In each of the corners I added in a big pillar, but to put a little twist on a normal pillar, I gave it a little twist. There's also a pretty good chance these were added just to minimize the mangrove usage. But probably my favorite part of what we just did is the ceiling, as not only does the design have a lot of pluses, but it was also nice to build a ceiling that's not covered in hundreds of vines. I felt like the carvings didn't fit in as well as they did when the whole room was just stone, so so to fix that I kind of transitioned the ceiling down into them, which I think works pretty well. For the middle of the ceiling, I tried to make it look like the tree was growing into it by adding a bunch of these various sized geodes. But the ceiling still isn't finished, as I want to add something onto each of these square spaces. So in the same way that we finished the ceiling out there, let's add in a couple of butterflies. And by now I'm sure I don't need to tell you that they're going to be carvings. There's number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then yeah, I think that really completes the ceiling. With the hole dug and the whole hole decorated, I think it's finally time we get to the subscriber part, which based on the emptiness of the floor, I'm sure you could guess where this is going. For every one person that subscribes, I'll place a flower in this room. In other words, for every increase of 1 in base 10 place value, I'll place 1 valued flower at the base of this place. So if you haven't subscribed yet and want a flower, you better do so before I finish placing them, cause that's definitely how that works. I want to use every space available in here, which means I needed a way to light up the floor while still placing a flower there. So I decided to just place leaves over a frog light, then since you can't place flowers or flower pots on them, just add a fake flower. And I guess these can just represent anyone who subscribed by accident, or my family members that are forced to. But we still have quite a few flowers to go, so let's place all those in. And there's all of your flowers. So far we have 1,183, or I guess 1,182. Yeah, I saw that. And hopefully we'll eventually be able to fill this whole room, which I think will look really cool. Or actually just the outside would be fine. I haven't made a design for the middle part yet. And for everyone that has subscribed, or even just watched this far, thank you for my left and right ventricle. But we've made way more progress than I should have in one episode, so that's gonna be it for me today. Thanks for watching, and see you all in the next episode.